Okay, welcome back.
Welcome back to another episode of
Not Your Fetish Podcast,
where we talk about
spirituality,
art, healing,
healing,
and
motherhood.
motherhood. First,
Alright.
congrats to us because we have released our first episode.
Yes. And second.
And second, we're killing it right now. I think we're being very consistent. Yeah, so we're back. And how are you? Oh, did I already ask you that?
I'm good. I feel like this week you were away, but
Yep.
I was here in LA, and I just feel like, so some of you may know, some of you may not know, I'm a full-time artist, so I deal with a lot of stuff during the week, just like battling my own self in a lot of ways. So it's always such a roller coaster of like good days and bad days, and not even days, but like moments, just facing imposter syndrome and
Yeah.
and and just like forcing myself to show up when I feel unmotivated. So yeah, girl, I'm good, but it's always something I'm having to face, you know.
Right.
I hate saying the word battle because that makes it feel like, I'm fighting, and I'm not fighting anymore. I'm kind of just like surrendering, but it's hard for me to surrender. So yeah,
That's real. Yeah, it definitely is hard to surrender, especially just being, I think it's just like our human nature to just always want to be in control of things in our lives. But we're spiritual as mommies.
Yes,
And we try to give it up to the Most High
always
for everything, even this podcast, which actually leads us to the topic of today. And imposter syndrome, you even like mentioned that. We'll get into it more.
Yeah. But before we get there, how are
Yes.
you?
I'm great. I just got back too from vacation. We just got back. It was a very good break and a like nice little vacation from California. Like Florida was amazing. The weather, the hydration, yes. The water was cleaner. It was more it was slower and quieter.
That's why people go to the retired.
Yeah, I can definitely see why. It's like a retirement state, you know? I'm like, shoot, I want to retire now. Still got stuff to do. But it was really good meeting family and stuff. It was a new experience because, like Siren meeting his grandparents, his whole family from his dad's side. So that was really beautiful. It was also very like spiritual and mentally emotional, things were taking place inside me at the end of the trip because I had a moment to reflect. And as a mom, there was things that I like felt, like for the first time allowing my son to be, like his family to like hold him and to love on him and just that was like a new experience because for so long, for 5 months, me and Vince have been doing it alone. So to have like other people take care of him and support him, it was like, as a mom, it was a thing I've never felt before, like this connection. I was like very nervous and like want to protect him at all costs and like, like just do whatever I can. But then also like let go of control because this is his family and like, that's just like the kind of mom I decided I wanted to be.
Right.
So yeah, that was like a growing experience for me. I shared this too with my partner and it was a very like emotional moment. But now that I'm like aware of what was actually happening, I'm like, oh, this is just a part of growing and like a part of being a mom. And yeah, I remember texting you too, like while on vacation, literally texted you every day, like every day, about this. And you made me feel like seen in that way of like, what it feels like, of certain things. Like it sounds really dramatic, but I felt like I was mourning a little bit, like that little, I stopped breast pumping too. So there was a lot of things of like
Just transition.
Like my son was growing, I was growing too, like when it comes to breastfeeding and just family and stuff. It was a lot, but
Yeah.
it was beautiful and very necessary. And coming back, I'm like, yes, I'm ready to work harder. So I'm motivated and I'm happy that we're here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. So definitely mental health is very relevant to this week's conversation.
Definitely. I feel like mental health is something that I've been dealing with probably for my whole life, and I think that as I'm growing on this journey spiritually, um, I'm finding that I'm inheriting a lot of mental health issues. You know what I mean? And I don't think that it came to my attention that I was dealing with mental health until I was like a teenager, like I want to say like end of high school. So that's when I really, really got bad. And we've talked about this before, but like just how taboo mental health is within the Asian community. And it's not just Asian community. I feel like it's any kind of like immigrant household. Like mental health just doesn't really exist, or like mental health issues don't exist.
The awareness.
Yeah. It's almost like they don't want it to exist, so they suppress it, and like they want you to suppress it. Because I remember just like bringing up my struggles with mental health to my parents and having them kind of throw it back in my face and be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, do you know what we had to deal with? Like, you live such an easy life compared to what we had to do, et cetera, et cetera. So there's always like this feeling of invalidation,
Right.
that leaks into adulthood. So I feel like a lot of my mental health is rooted in inner child and inner teenager, like trauma, you know?
Yeah.
And then I had mentioned this to you kind of yesterday. It's like when you're dealing with your mental health alone and nobody's there to reflect back onto you, it's so much easier to deal with. But now being in a committed relationship and being a mother, I have these two mirrors that are constantly triggering me. And the grown me is having to find ways to respond in a mature way,
Right.
in a way that is not a trauma response. And yeah, the inner child work is really real. And I feel like I'm healing through my son, but I'm also triggered through my son.
Yeah. Every day, every moment.
Every time. Yeah.
I feel that. I feel like, and it gets harder once your baby like has more and more of a personality.
I see so much of him in me, like how he needs his emotions validated, how he responds to certain situations of like of distress. You know what I mean? I see so much of myself in my son,
Yeah.
and I get so triggered because I think I mentioned this in the episode previous, or in the first episode. Like I want to respond back like my mom, and I can't, and I know that I can't. So it's like I feel like I'm creating a blueprint right now on how to navigate mental health, and it's so difficult because it feels really lonely. But yeah.
I feel you. I feel like that's just like what comes with being a parent too, is like when you're feeling triggered. Let's say, for example, like when I was sick, right, 2 weeks ago, and I couldn't even show up to be a mom because I wanted my mom. You know what I mean? So like when you're constantly triggered by your baby, when they're like, going crazy and you're so tired and there's no energy or like enough like light in you to be like, okay, come here. You just want to be like, oh my God, sometimes, and like that's some real stuff. But you still can't, like, you have to like hold back from a lot of toxic stuff that you were taught, in my experience, like as a growing up, yeah, like it was very taboo to talk about mental health in my household too. my family, we immigrated here when I was 3 years old. I don't know what year that is, honestly, but the first thing that my parents were used to is just surviving and like figuring out how to survive in a whole new country where they don't know the culture, the language, or even anybody that is familiar, you know? So with their or their survival mode and their trauma responses, we like catch on
Inherited
to
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we inherit that. And my mom and dad never had a moment to sit down with a therapist and be like, this is hard. You know, like my mom literally came here with 3 kids.
Grace Choi is a businesswoman.
She's a bad bitch. She's a tiger mama. And she definitely gets shit done. And the fact that she moved here with 3 kids is crazy. Like, I can't imagine even doing that right now for me. But yeah, because they never had the safe space to be vulnerable with what they were going through. It was we never thought that that was something you do, you know? So like when I started becoming aware that like I'm not a good child because I need help, you know, like growing up mentally. I think I stopped growing at a certain point. Like my inner child like stopped growing at a certain point because I felt neglect and all these things, you know, like unseen, or I didn't have a safe space to share stuff. And I've always been a very emotional person. Like even when I was a girl, I was very emotional. I was very sensitive to energies all around me, and just I was very expressive too. So like I'm always like lashing out and stuff, but it was never a moment of like, okay, why are you lashing out? Like talk to me, you
The
know?
validation.
Yeah, and like just guidance to like navigate the mind, because the human mind just does its own thing sometimes.
Because as a child, you don't know how to transmute emotion or like energy, you know what I mean? So if you have all of this angst and
Right.
nobody's teaching you how to release that, then it's just going to build up until you have a fucking tantrum.
Right.
And then when your tantrum is not being validated or paid attention to, it causes you to go into solitude or like, you know, in not even solitude, like just like retreat, you know what I mean? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
yeah. It's definitely you just go in, you just recluse. And that is what I was very used to as well. And anybody who I can relate with in that type of lifestyle, like at school or when I went to church, you know, a lot of friends my age was also going through a lot of family messed up issues too. And we would bond together, have a cigarette when you're 14 years old.
So you
like
started trauma bonding at a young age.
I did, yeah. With anybody, and it was usually bad influences because, you know, like they're also going through the same thing.
Misery loves company.
Exactly. And I'm not gonna like air out, like I was trained to not air out our family business to anybody. So if I see any other family that's like super happy and like, or it seems really happy and very friendly and welcoming, I would be very like, okay, cool, nothing, like I have nothing to share, you know, I'm just here to experience the experience. But the ones that like went through what I went through, we would cry together, we would smoke together, just trauma bond, you know? Also, we trauma bond too when we first met too, because we were
Definitely.
very angsty little hurt, you know, girls.
But at the
So,
same time, it's like, I feel like we finally met somebody who like I keep saying this, but validation's such a big pattern in my life. But I feel like once I connected with you, because our experiences of just like being a middle child and feeling that neglect and just not being seen, like we finally were able to validate each other and validate each other's experiences.
right.
And I think that's really important to add on to, because it wasn't always super unhealthy.
Yeah.
I think that we also were able to provide a safe space for each other
Right.
to just be. And,
Right.
and like, we had touched upon this before, but like the parts of us that are our shadow, you know what I mean? I feel like when we first met, like it was finally like our shadow was able to just exist without us having to suppress it and constantly showing up in this light that was exhausting. You
We
know?
really provided a safe space for our shadows to live their best life when we first met.
Yeah.
And then God really continue to nourish our friendship so that we can grow. Like sometimes we grow apart and sometimes like we always came back together, and that is very rare. I recognize, and I'm so grateful for this friendship because that doesn't always happen. You know, like people don't
Right.
grow together. It's not always aligned, but now here we are with as moms, and like now we have, you know, this space that we've created too, and we've always continued to like create multiple spaces. So like we didn't even know that we created our village back then. It was the beginning. So
For
that's
sure.
beautiful.
I think the biggest thing with that is like my ego doesn't exist when I'm, you know, when I'm with you, you know, in our relationship. Like I don't need to move in my ego.
Right.
So in times that we did grow apart, like it never hurt my ego to try to rebuild the relationship back
Yeah.
to be better. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even the sorry to cut
Go
you
ahead,
off.
go ahead, go ahead.
Even the moments when we did grow apart, I gotta say that correlates with mental health a lot because
Yes.
in those moments, personally from my side, it was anytime I felt insecure that I wasn't loved or I wasn't, you know, like understood. Like my goodness wasn't my intentions wasn't understood in a certain way, you know? Like those are the moments when I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna go back in my shell because nobody, like, I can't trust
It's
anyone.
the abandonment, you know what I mean?
And
it's
like, yeah,
it's if you're I don't want to be abandoned, so I'm gonna abandon you.
right,
You know
first,
what I mean? Yeah.
because it'll hurt less.
But in the way you're still abandoning yourself,
Right.
because you're not even allowing yourself to grow from that fear, you know, past
Right.
that fear of being left. And so yeah, I totally get that, because you know me too, like this, even the relationship I'm in now, like this is the first time where like when shit gets hard, like I don't want to jump ship. I'm like, I'm gonna stay on this shit even if it's sinking, you know
Right.
what I mean? But like before, anytime I would run into an issue, I'd be like, yeah, nah, I'm good.
Right.
You know, like I don't need this. I'm
Yeah.
gonna go back to being alone because that was easier. I didn't have to deal with nobody. Like I couldn't be abandoned if I didn't, you know, if I was just by myself.
Right.
So I feel that.
Yeah.
But I do kind of want to just rewind a little bit and talk
Yeah.
about. I feel like our families, like how they got to the U.S., had such a big influence on how we're moving today.
Yeah.
Just mentally and financially, because like you said, I didn't immigrate here. I was born in the States, but like my family is a family of refugees who came. And like you said, they had to come, and they were in survivor mode even before they got here, because their home was being destroyed, you know? So being in refugee camps in Thailand and then having to find way over to the States, and now we're in the States and it's still survivor mode. Right. And so I guess not knowing how to move outside of survivor mode is something that's really big for our the past generation, and then even our generation has adopted that, you know. Right. And now it's kind of like having to be the generational breaker of that trauma response is such a big job for us. And we can get into the trauma responses of like how my family handled it. Was like they fell into alcoholism and gambling as trauma responses of survivor mode. And I feel like that had such a big impact on how I dealt with my mental health. Growing up was the first time I got really stressed out about something. What did I do? I turned to alcohol. I turned to cigarettes. I turned to all of these different vices because that's how I saw my parents deal with their mental health problems.
Right.
And then, like, you know, I went through periods of time where I was probably an alcoholic, you know, and I got addicted to certain drugs. Like I got addicted to nicotine. I got addicted to all of these things because I was suppressing so much of not feeling validated and feeling inadequate, you know what I mean? Not feeling like I deserved anything because I never had received anything.
Right.
So yeah, I feel like even though they came here on different circumstances, it's still very much like that same story of having to come here for a better life, but not being able to move out of survivor mode and not realizing what that did to us as children. So yeah.
I was gonna say, our parents, it was different times. So they
Mm-hmm.
did their best
They
at the
did.
time to hold it together, to keep us alive, to put food on the table, you know? And um, yeah, that shit was definitely hard on them. But I feel like, I mean, to speak it in like very spiritual tense too, like also like it was the age of Pisces during that time. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of like it wasn't like a lot of information about, you know, awakening and spirituality and understanding yourself and God, higher power, or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, just like solid meditating. None of that stuff was accessible during the age of Pisces, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
all of our parents' generation is like just surviving without. They're always just looking for something to guide them, which is
Mm-hmm.
why I feel like during that time a lot of people, you know, resorted to like psychedelics, and like a lot of like leaders, you know, it was just like a different time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like now I don't feel like, oh, I'm the chosen one in my family line.
No.
It's I chose to stop this at me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like I just chose to, and I chose to because I have the information that was downloaded from my mom, from my grandmother, from my great grandmother, you know, like all these
Mm-hmm.
things that there was a moment in my life where I said, okay, no more. I'm not doing that I'm not going to pass that on down to my kids, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's like the generational trauma cycle breaker for us to be is like, it's definitely hard, but it's totally worth it,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And who's to say it really stops at us? But
Right. There's
we're
always
making
work,
progress,
for
you know,
sure.
so that the next generation of Siren and Makiro,
Yeah.
they're a little bit more equipped to deal with things, because who's to say mental health that doesn't fizzle out, right? I
Right.
feel like every person has to go through some sort of growth within their mental health.
For sure.
Um, then we'll always reach a turbulence. So like you said, like that chosen one mentality is not is that's so dead, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is inclusive to everybody, but you have to want to choose to work, to
Right.
do the inner work. Um, but yeah, like it just is so crazy, because there was a certain point in time in our lives where we had to stop and start taking accountability for our mental health,
Mm-hmm.
because I think for a while, like, it was so easy to blame our parents and blame the environment that we grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of all of that, like, you know, we still have to hold ourselves accountable in a certain way,
For
you know what I
sure.
mean? It's like, okay, take a step back, evaluate your space, and then navigate how to grow from there, you know,
Right.
instead of just fucking sitting and dwelling and being like, oh, woe is me, my parents weren't never rich, so I'm never gonna be rich. Like,
Right.
fuck that.
Right. It gets weird when, you know, it's nice and cute when you're a kid and you're throwing a like temper tantrum, but when you're like 28 years old and you're throwing a temper tantrum, it's like, bro, get your shit together,
Or
you
it's like
know?
I'm acting like this because my parent and how my parents treated me, and it's
Like, you're grown. Like, you're
like figure
grown.
it the fuck out. It's hard,
It
you know. We'll
is.
never take away that,
It
but
definitely is.
you have to look at yourself in the mirror at a certain point
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to your own, like, you have to take full responsibility for your own mental, and um that shit gets hard
Yeah.
because accountability is difficult. I don't
Right.
care how, if anybody else like has something to say about that, but yeah, being like holding yourself accountable and taking responsibility for yourself is super important.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I remember talking to my mom and telling her, like, it was a very emotional, like, I think after we fought or something, but I was like, you know, like, how hard it is to be the one to like break the generational trauma in our family. And she's like, you think you're the only one? You think I didn't break any generational traumas? Like, you have no idea what I went through as a child, you know? And
Mhm.
like, we had that moment and I was like, whoa, you're right. Like, I'm over here, like,
Mhm.
it really humbled me in that moment because my mom had to fight her own battles too, you know, and
Right.
that's how we got even here. And God gave me a different assignment.
Mhm.
So, and that's gonna be different for Siren and, you know, etc. So, yeah, yeah. I wanted to share, like during COVID from my perspective, like what I felt like, um, the collective, like as a world, we were going through mentally, like, well, the mental health of all of us. I feel like, in my perspective, it was a time that God gifted us to be in solitude. Like the whole world shut down, you know, and like that's freaking history. Like when was the last time that has happened, you know? And we were forced to be like with ourselves. And I feel like personally, I had a spiritual awakening during that time too. Mind you, I did do a lot of psychedelics during that time.
You're not the only one.
Like being home at, you know, just home alone with you, yourself, and you,
yeah,
and
nothing
we.
to do.
Yeah, you just like, you know, let me just explore my spirituality a little bit.
Let me get closer to God.
Yeah, exactly. And like it was a time for me where I really started like deepening my relationship with God and my spirituality, and I felt like it was a collective thing because after we came out of lockdown, I felt like I had more friends that I can talk to about spirituality and mental health and accountability, integrity, and just all of these things that I look for. And I also went through as well. So it was like I started aligning with people after being alone for so long that I was like, oh, wow, God was really working in all of us, you know? And I shared this with you too, but also is because Queen Cup has brought this
Shout out
in.
to Queen Cup.
Shout out to Queen
I
Cup.
love you,
Come on our
Destiny.
show. Come
Angel
on our
gang,
show.
gang.
Angel gang, gang. Angel gang, gang. Okay, but come on our show. We would love to have you. Future manifestations. But Queen Cup was the one that said, and it really resonated with me. She said that she feels like when people say Jesus is gonna come back, like, right? Like when Christians say like Jesus is gonna come back, it's what we picture is Jesus on like clouds coming down from the sky to like save us and take us to heaven and stuff. And like how she viewed it was the way Jesus is gonna come back is through Christ consciousness in all of us. And when we all decide to walk in our spirituality and just be more aligned with our own selves is when Jesus is going to come back. Like that's a way of Jesus coming back. And that really resonated with me because for so long I was always wondering like, because I grew up in church, you know, and I always wondered like what, like Jesus is going to come back, like judgment day, all these words that I was taught growing up in church. It was like, it didn't click, you know, a lot of things were not aligned for me. And when she said that, it was like, oh, that is, I agree with that. It makes sense for me. Yeah.
COVID for me was such an interesting time. I also spent a lot of alone time, but it was also a space for me to really, like I said, reflect. And I noticed how codependent I was on other people and how I hated being alone. I hated solitude. Like I was fearful of solitude. It was almost like I was fearful of my own mind, you know what I mean? And being left alone in my own head really terrified me. So it was I had also a spiritual awakening in those moments too, because it was the time where like I felt like I was being forced. Like God was like, stop, be still, be in solitude, but also be with me. You know what I mean? And it felt like once I finally started being comfortable in solitude, that's when I got pregnant.
Yeah.
And it was like I saw a glimpse of peace, and then I got pregnant, and I was like, it was like my mental health, just like the work that I thought I had done, I realized like, oh bitch, this is just the beginning. Like I just had nearly scratched the surface. Like once I got pregnant, I realized how much work needed to be done. And that was terrifying for me because I was battling, like feeling like I was selfish for wanting a baby, for having a baby, feeling like I didn't do enough work to deserve this blessing. Like, who's to say I'm equipped to be a mother? You know what I mean? And this was all happening in COVID, and it was going on, and I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody. So I was kind of like the opposite for me, where I felt like I didn't have a community anymore. because I was alone, and I felt like I was the community that I had before, because I was dealing with different things. I wasn't aligned with anybody else anymore, and I was just dealing with stuff that was unrelatable to everybody else because of the circumstances. And so it was a time where I feel like I didn't have anybody. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And it was just so like I just felt so much pressure. I felt like I needed to like really get my shit together. But because of where the world was, I had no control of getting my shit together. Um so yeah, it's going back to just like the surrendering and just allowing the emotions to move through me. And not battling my shadow.
Yeah.
And just allowing her to exist,
Right.
you know? So that was my COVID. Like, COVID for me was really, it was really fun, and then it got really fucking serious really quickly.
Right.
And the solitude didn't help me. It honestly, like, it made me feel so much more lonelier. And I hated it. And so I think once things started to open back up, I was like a fucking horse, like about to race, like, let me out, let me out, let me out. But at the same time, I couldn't be out like that too, because of the fear that was instilled in me of like going outside. Like, I didn't want to get sick. I didn't want to be like, I didn't want to be so selfish that if I got sick and hurt my baby before he got here, like, and it was just on some like, oh, I want to go out and be around people type shit. You know what I mean? So yeah, that shit was really difficult for me.
Yeah.
And then even afterwards, the fear of like him being around people breathing on him, like battling, like if I should do the vaccines, if I shouldn't get the vaccines, like just so scared for health. And I feel like COVID really implemented this anxiety into me that I didn't even know could exist.
Right.
Because I was responsible for keeping a being alive, you know? So yeah, COVID was
being pregnant during that time is probably, I would imagine, being wild, because even when I was pregnant and it wasn't even shut down, I was going through so many emotions and things happening, like just your mind are like shifts a lot when you're going through a life-changing thing like that. So I can't imagine, like, that's just a lot of things happening. I think it also, like the difference between you and I is like during that time when COVID happened, literally happened on my birthday. But during that time, I remember going through a season of my life where I was not scared to cut people out of my life. Like I was very kind of like trying to detox my life, like, because I didn't want to do what I was doing for freaking years anymore. Like I really wanted to be stable. Like I'm in LA, like I came here to make a life, and I like messed up a lot in the beginning of it, And so during like when COVID happened, like it was a lot of things where I wanted new experiences. I wanted new everything. I was just so sick and tired of the old. And then before I knew it, it was shut down, and I was forced to be in that situation, and I asked for it. So I like basked in it. You know what I mean? Like I really basked in it. And I don't really remember how you and I kind of drifted apart during that season. To be honest, I don't remember. Do you remember?
do.
What happened?
But we don't need to get into it.
Okay. That's probably why I don't remember, because I just deleted
You blocked
it.
that shit out. Meanwhile, I'm over here like, bitch.
This girl always remembers everything. And my trauma response is to delete. Just delete everything.
See, me, I over obsess. And
that's crazy. Like you and I both, well, like humans, different, reactions or responses to things. That's crazy. Because that's why we had different COVID experiences, I mean, mind you, you were pregnant too, so it's like added on.
It was like the beginning of COVID, I wasn't pregnant, but I was having a great time in the beginning, because even though I was struggling with facing the fact that I'm codependent in people, like and I like to escape into people, it was like I was taking accountability and then allowing myself to just kind of bask in that solitude. So like I said, like it's like I saw the glimpse of it and I felt that peace. And like right when I was like, oh my God, yes, I made it, God was like, bitch, fall in line.
Right. Right.
um
God will do that to you.
yeah, humbled the fuck out of me.
Yep. I love a nice God humble moment. Lord.
But I'm so grateful that I even got to experience that, even just slightly, because before COVID, when we were living in Boston, like the hustle and bustle in Boston, it was like work, work, socialize, like not sleeping, just like always on go, always on go. So it felt so beautiful, like in these moments to just be still. And I was really able to get into like my creative bag and like just like I would wake up, I would smoke, I would little microdose, I would paint, I would just sit in the sun. I was just like, thank you, God. Like, thank you so much. And I did so much inner child healing as much as I could alone, you know.
Yeah.
Little did I know I had so much, I had a long way to go, you know. But yeah, now I feel like I'm able to open up and share my experiences because I've already experienced it. But I'm one of those people, like in the moment when I'm going through it, I can't talk about it. Like I am really a Libra. Like y'all gotta understand. I got how many planets in Libra? Like my head is in the clouds. Like I am up here is where I live a lot of the times, like not present, just in my head. And especially when I'm going something, I'm here. Like I'm not here, but I'm here. And that's something that I had to work through as well, especially being in a committed relationship, because when you're not present, the other part, like your counterpart, feels it.
Yeah.
And they're like, yo, what the fuck? Like, Big, I was always like, yeah, you
Right.
here? Like, what's good? Like, talk to me. And I'm such a I'm fine type of girl. Like, I'm fine. I'm good.
Right.
Because it's always me versus me.
Yeah.
Like, I never feel like I need to open up. But once I relinquish, you know what I mean? I feel so much lighter. I don't know why, like, but that goes back to not feeling like I had a safe space as a child. So as an adult, I didn't feel like I had a safe space, especially during that time. Like, you and I weren't cool. So that one safe space that I did have was not available to me.
Yeah.
So that was really difficult. But shit, we made it.
Yeah. You know, now that I think about it, I think I'm just like remembering all the good times of COVID, but there was some toxic parts too where I think I was like in another like past relationship during that time. It was fairly new at the moment and completely latched on to that fully. And you know me, like once I see something that I like, I'm just fully in it. And then I let go of everything else that gets in it, in the way, and that was my way of like kind of shutting out all the things that I needed to deal with inside, was to distract myself
with just one person.
Yeah, with just one person. And that's what happened, And I think that's why certain parts of my growth was stalled during that year, because I did a lot of like just living. And I didn't do much of like reflecting, yeah, it was different.
Like you weren't dealing with it, you were just living with it.
Yeah, so that year it was all a year of fantasies and all these things that I thought was real happening to me. And then it got real later, when the truth really always comes out, and things that were like I harbored inside always surfaced up, especially within that relationship too. And coming out of it, I realized that I latch onto the validation of men since I was young, and that's my trauma response too. And that's why when I'm all in. No matter how fucked up you treat me, if I'm latched on, I'm latched on, And it was,
Committed.
yeah, it was, I don't know, like that's what I was shown too. Like both my parents, like they've always been in a toxic relationship. Till this day, their divorce files are not finalized, but they do not live together, And that's what I thought was like, even if you're not happy, you still just have to be together, And like, That's
me, girl.
mm-hmm.
My parents too, like they would like split up, get back together. And I think there was like one point when I had moved out, like I was begging my mom. I'm like, just do it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just go.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be scared to be on your own.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's their relationship. You know what I mean? I don't even need to read into my parents' relationship. All I need to do is work on mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I definitely saw the cycles though, like repeating of like staying in toxic cycles just
Yeah.
because of the comfortability of it, you know, because sometimes that's all I know and that's what's comfortable for me. I don't want to fucking grow. I don't want to heal. Like heal what? You know? Like stop talking to me, you know?
It's also like that fear of being alone and being left behind.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
because from that relationship I had to be alone. Fast forward, was it I don't know what year that relationship ended.
2021,
Really?
early, maybe late 2020,
Maybe.
like
or 2021,
right before
I would
we
say.
moved in here.
Yeah. So after that, like a rude awakening happening, you know, like fucked up relationships, some shit happened, you know. We don't have to get into it, but I had to really be alone. Like really alone, you know. I packed my shit and I just left and got into a whole new apartment, start a whole new life, just start from scratch. My everything that I built was just broken down like Jenga, and I just started all the way from scratch, you know. And this time I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to. This is when I decided to myself. I vowed to myself. I was like, I'm not going to search for another search for validation and affirmation within men. I'm so done with that, you know, like freaking daddy issues. I'm done. Like I'm done with that like narrative. I'm not gonna do it anymore. So I decided to just commit to myself and not try to be in a relationship. And I just hustled. I had 2-3 jobs at the time trying to pay this freaking rent and stuff. And I think that was the best thing that has ever happened to me, because ever since then, you know, and then I found my partner, like my life partner.
You
and
see
then
how quickly that shit happens. Like once you start choosing yourself,
I
it's
have
like
chills
right when you start feeling it, God's like, all right, here's a family.
Yeah.
Like here's your partner, here's your baby. Like now you're in the next chamber of healing.
Yeah. And during that whole time in my past relationship, I felt like something was like I felt like lies. I felt betrayed. Deception. I felt a lot of things behind closed doors that I couldn't bring up. And you even told me like you were always repressed in certain ways, like who I really was. I don't know.
You weren't you.
Yeah. I was just always trying to like please, you know, and that wasn't who I am. That isn't who I am.
At all.
So when God just completely took everything away from me, I think that was the best thing that has happened, because now I was able to build the way, like I was able to build again with God and not just by myself. And then everything started coming. Like I just constantly kept getting blessings. Blessings on blessings. And then when I met Vince, it was like the most like, there were parts where I was like scared and doubting myself. Doubting myself, because I was just kind of like, I really don't want to fucking cry.
It's okay.
So I'm trying to like, doubting myself, being in another relationship, thinking that the same shit's not gonna happen again. You know, like I hope I'm making the better decision. I hope I grew from my past mistakes, you know? So there were moments where I was going through that, but it was the most like chill way of being in a relationship. There was no high ups and downs. There was no adrenaline rush. There was no like obsession to see each other every time. It was just very chill. I could just show up and then that's it. That's enough, you know? And here we are. We have a freaking family together. We're engaged. And I'm just like, whoa. As soon as I chose myself, God was like, I got you. Like you have no idea how much of abundance I have for you, as long as you just surrender to me. Like you have no idea what I have planned for you. You have so much greatness for you, you know? I didn't trust that before, but now I'm like, I'm walking in it every day. And that shit is hard to walk in your greatness and to
Yeah.
trust in
You
yourself.
can't be scared of your greatness.
Even with this podcast, girl, I told you, I was like, oh my God, people are going to see. But here I am, like, yes, welcome back to our podcast.
No,
Yeah.
I feel you.
So share with us a little bit about mental health during postpartum for you.
So postpartum for me was a journey. I still feel like I'm on the journey, but it all kind of started like, I feel like during pregnant, I had a pretty easy pregnancy in terms of just like no health complications. Everything was green light. I didn't have no diabetes. Like the only thing that I kind of dealt with was like my iron levels, but Southeast Asians just have low iron. It's just, it is what it is. But a little bit about how Mikiro became Earthside, like that's where it all started because I had planned to give birth. This is just a little backstory, but like I had planned to give birth like a natural water birth at a birthing center, and my water broke at 35 weeks, so that whole plan got fucking 86. I was in a hospital and White Memorial. Showed up to
Our
White
babies were born in the same
Yes,
hospital.
they were. Showed up at White Memorial, like, I just wasn't dilating, you know, because it was just so early, but I was losing so much fluid. So my stomach was shrinking and Mikiro was freaking out. And like every time I got induced, so like they hooked me up to the Pitocin. Once I was starting to contract, my Mikiro's vitals kept dropping every time that they tried to up the Pitocin because his space was getting smaller. So he was freaking out. And it makes so much sense now because he does not like no tight spaces. Like that boy don't like to be held down at all. So basically we had to do an emergency C-section. And my birthing plan went completely this way, left. And I think the worst part about that too was like I just felt so unprepared. And it was already like I was already feeling inadequate. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't give birth to my baby the way that I wanted to. And I just hated that. And so I felt baby blues right away because right after Mikiro came out of me, I didn't even hold him. You know what I mean? Like they took him straight to NICU. I went straight like back into like the recovery room where like I had to wear off all like of the anesthetic and just all of, you know, I was just very, very feeling emotional. And I didn't see him until 24 hours later. So I'm already feeling like this disconnect of not being a mom. Like it felt like I gave birth and then I didn't have a baby.
That's crazy.
It was. And then they were also like, not even 24 hours later, like wanting me to walk, wanting me to like get up and just be good. And they were pushing on my stomach and like, it was just all of this stuff. And like, I wasn't able to rest because they just like kept coming back in and, you know, probing me, checking me, all of this stuff. And so it was just like, it was super emotional. And then afterwards, like having to, like not really getting any rest afterwards because I was having to get up, go to the hospital. Like we were taking shifts. So I wasn't even seeing my partner like that because it was like he would be gone in the morning and be at the hospital with Mikiro because COVID, we couldn't be there at the same time. So it was literally like we weren't even able to bond together and feel like we were parents together. Like it would be like Big Al was in the NICU and then he would come home, we would eat dinner like for like 30 minutes. I would leave and then I would stay with Mikiro till like midnight, 1:00, and then come home, try to get rest. Big Al would try to get rest. Like, but it was so difficult. That was like for like 6 days. And then we were finally able to take him home. So yeah, that jump started my postpartum depression because I was just feeling like shit, bro.
It's
like
traumatic.
Yeah, and then
You went through a traumatic experience.
and then I wasn't producing, you know what I mean? Like the lactation part was difficult. So I'm like, can imagine I'm feeling like, fuck, like I can't even feed my baby on top of not being able to even like be with him. Like I'm just like, it's fucking me up. So yeah, like that was really hard, just like moving forward. And I think in those moments, like I was just trying to keep it together because I knew that I had to, you know what I mean? Like I felt like there was not one moment where I could really be like, fuck, like
Take a break.
yeah, like this sucks. Cause immediately when we brought him home, it was like, okay, now we're in parent mode, and like I'm trying to heal, but at the same time, I don't know how to receive help. I don't know how to allow my partner to help me, you know what I mean? So him and I are getting into it because he's like, why are you doing the most when you should be doing the absolute least? And I just like, I didn't know how to handle not being in full control.
Right.
And yeah, for so long I just was like suppressing it and not allowing it, like not talking about it, because I felt like if I talked about it then it was real. And I just didn't feel like I really had safe spaces, like regardless of like the mommy groups that I was in, or like the moms in my family, or like the moms that I knew, like it was cool, and they kept telling me like, if you need to talk, I'm here, but I didn't want to talk to them. And I didn't even want to talk to a therapist. Like I didn't want to talk. And so I just piled on the workload of being a mother. And I don't suggest anybody fucking do that.
Yeah.
But
you know, that just reminds me, sorry to cut you off, but before pregnancy, like when we were in Boston, whenever we're going through anything, right? Like anything super rough, our trauma response is to pick up more shifts, to work extra hours, you know, and like just block all of the things that I don't want to think about right now and just kind of overwork myself. So that kind of like, it sounds like that's what you were also doing during your like, you know, motherhood
and I
journey.
went right back to work. Like I didn't even fucking rest. Like once he was like 5-6 months, I was like, all right, I'm ready, let's go. And I went back to work. And even when I was at work, I just hated it. You know, I hated everything. I was just trying to find normalcy, you know what I mean? And it was difficult for me to bond with my baby because of it, because of this. It's not even like resentment, but like that is just like that reoccurring feeling of like, why, God? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why did I get this blessing? I wasn't ready. Like, I didn't feel like I was ready. But there was just one day where I was like, fuck being ready. Like, you just gotta fucking show up. Like, you have to. So really, I feel like motherhood has been teaching me to really show up for myself, like really show up for myself, like not no bullshit show up of like taking myself out to dinner, getting facials, getting my nails done, getting my hair done, like none of the superficial stuff. Like show up for your soul, you know, who show up for the little inner child you, for teenage you, for every past self, you know. You have to show up because otherwise, like, what the fuck are you doing?
Right. You're not doing life. Life is doing you.
Right.
You have to be in control.
Yeah. So postpartum, yeah. And then not to mention like your whole body changes. So like I'm feeling all of these insecurities that I never felt before. Like I've hated my body, like these stretch marks, my boobs, like, you know. So now there's this insecurity that I'm getting in my relationship where I'm like, oh my God, like, is he gonna love me anymore? Like, I'm not who he was when he met me. Like, I don't look how I looked when he met me. Like, I'm a completely different woman. And so there's like this insecurity of like, are you gonna stick around for this shit when it gets ugly? Because I feel it getting ugly. But he did. So, you know, we go through it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was just like all of this insecurity that I was having to deal with that I didn't know was going to surface. You know what I mean? And I think I didn't even know what postpartum depression was until I was pregnant. You know what I'm saying? So it, yeah, it was just really hard for me to navigate. And also, me not knowing how to receive and accept help. I was my own worst enemy when it came to it because I didn't reach out to anybody. So I just suffered. Um, but now I feel like if I were, down the line when we do have another child, like I said before about like the breastfeeding stuff, like I feel a lot more equipped to be able to go through this again. And to be able to also help people feel seen and feel like there's a safe space because I never felt like I had a safe space. I do everything that I can to provide a safe space.
Right.
So yeah, that's my postpartum journey. I feel like I'm just getting back to feeling confident, to loving myself, to like feeling like Souvy, pre and post baby, like just really loving where I am now and the body, giving grace to my body and giving grace to my journey,
Yeah.
Been through a lot, so I can't keep shitting on myself,
Right.
But yeah, how about you?
You're doing great.
Thank you.
For real. You're doing great. You're a great mom. And if it wasn't for you, I would have had who knows what kind of postpartum journey I would have had, Even though I couldn't be what you were there for me, like during your pregnancy, just know that your next pregnancy is going to be so freaking awesome. You're going to have everything that you've always wanted and you provide for now, for other moms when you get pregnant again or whatever you decide in the future. I just wanted to let you know about
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. And I always tell you too, like that's your divine timing, the fact that like I had gone through it before is because you didn't need to go through that.
Yeah.
Like you didn't need to endure what I endured.
Yeah.
Like, I can't argue with, I have to take accountability in those spaces as well. Like a lot of my suffering was self-inflicting. So yeah, girl, I have to look at myself in the mirror and I have to be open to trusting people, but you can't trust nobody if you don't trust yourself.
Right.
So I had a lot of things to work on.
Yeah, your discernment. I feel like in my postpartum journey, it was a lot different. I had to deal with different things. Like for me, the first time I felt any type of blues was after Siren was born, and when we came home, like I think it was a second night, I felt like it literally the first thing that I feel is shame every time I like even want to share of like what actually was happening inside me. But I felt like during my pregnancy, it was just all about mama, right? And then later it's all about baby once the baby's here, and mama is just kind of like the food source and then just kind of there to just nurture the baby. Yeah. Everybody wants to just talk about the baby and stuff. So it was really weird to just be so loved and supported and protected, and then suddenly that be shifted all to another human being. And I totally feel you on the resentment part. It's not really resentment for your child, but it's the closest feeling that I felt. Like, I said I don't know what this feeling is, but it feels like resentment. And I know what that feels like, because I feel like I'm just a cow here. That's it. I just gave birth. I literally almost died and and I'm still like I'm here still, but it's all about the baby. So I feel like that's when I felt the blues, and I couldn't express that to my partner at the time too. I felt that with him too, I felt like he was just all about the baby when it was all about Haezy before, and that's because he's a good father. Like that's what he was doing. Like, he was doing what he was supposed to do. And I needed to vocalize that to him. And once we talked about it, it was like, oh wow, it left my body, the depression and the insecurity and the resentment that I was holding. And then afterwards, it's like my postpartum journey, I wouldn't say like I dealt with like anything as far as like what you've been through when it comes to all those traumatic experiences, especially during COVID and stuff. I had a lot of support. I had a lot of moms who became moms before me, like you and my sister. And like I had a lot of people that I had around me that supported me during my pregnancy. So my postpartum was very beautiful for me, and I have no complaints, you know. But I still went through some stuff because it just happens naturally. Like you're just going through hormonal imbalances. Your body is just going back to normal again, like before having a baby. And like I just there was a for me, I wanted to go back into work. I wanted to work out, you know, like I was just very motivated because I wanted to feel like myself so bad. And what I do whenever I feel like I'm not myself is I do whatever fuck it takes to do it. And I'm so glad that that's a part of who I am, because I've always been like that. Like I always will get my shit together eventually.
Me, I'm like, if I feel like shit, I'm gonna be like, yep, let's hang it up for the day.
I have those days too,
Like I'll
for
be
sure.
in bed, like I don't know, like I'll be binging something. Like I'm my own worst enemy, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Sometimes,
no, I
like,
totally
it's just,
relate.
But
It's just different, like ways of coping, you know.
What I noticed, what I do too, is like I know that when I'm creating, that's when I feel the happiest. And it's like when I start to feel like I'm spiraling, I know it's because like I haven't been creating for myself, you know? And it's almost like I don't even want to create because I don't want the solution to not work. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I know that if I work out, that if I clean my space and get organized and I start showing up for myself, that these things are going to make me feel better. But there's like this fear inside of me that if I do all of these things and I still feel the way I feel, that scares me. You know what I mean? Because it's like I'm putting in all this work, but I still feel like I hate myself.
I feel like that happens though when you're focusing on the wrong thing though. You know, like I didn't focus on my body's not the same way anymore. That's why I want to work out. I just wanted to work out because I wanted to move again. Like I was, you know, I just didn't like feeling paralyzed, you know? So I feel like if I chose to focus on those things, I know myself too. Like I can go there. I can get there really quick. But because I know that about myself, I need to stop that before it even gets there. You know, like because once I'm there, I'll literally bask in it. Don't what?
Because I did, like, honestly, after postpartum, I did start working out, like, immediately. Yeah. And because I wasn't seeing the results that I wanted to see, like, I just shat on myself and I hung it up. You know what I mean? And now I'm back into, like, being active and working out again. But the time that I spent not working out, I really had to sit with myself and be like, bro, why do you hate your body?
Yeah.
Like,
why do you want to work out?
And knowing, like, I had to, like, really, again, like, reflect. And there's just so much around it, right? Growing up, I was always the skinny child, or like the skinny grandchild. Like they had a whole fucking nickname for me that was based around my body type. And so already put into that box. And then like, I don't know, just like my body journey within itself, that was like one of the biggest things that I had to do with postpartum. And it was so much deeper than just me gaining weight, right? It was like me trying to meet the beauty standard of the States, or not even just the States, but like the world, you know? And so, yeah, I relinquished all of that. I'm like, girl.
I look at my stretch marks and I'm like, you see, Siren? What I've been through for you.
Yeah. They really like teach you how to hate yourself, like in society.
I feel like it's a lot of programming, you know, a lot of the way we were taught. It's just unhealthy.
Snapback culture.
Yes, like that shit is not real. I think mamas, like after you give birth, if you do choose to want to work out, you got to do it for yourself. Like not thinking like I want to snap back into my old body.
Mm-hmm.
Do it like I want to be healthy for myself.
Yeah, for your
I want to be
son,
stronger for my
for your
baby.
baby,
I
like
want to
being
be
able.
there.
Yeah, now it's like I have to work out because I gotta jump around and run around with my
Yeah, you got to
kid.
carry
Like,
your heavy baby. Like
and
he's only going to get
and I
heavier.
have to invest into my health because if I want to be
Mhm.
a mom that's going to be long standing,
Right.
then I have to take care of my health now and not later.
Absolutely.
You know, like
Absolutely.
so.
And we're still very
Right,
young.
prevent that shit. You know, it's preventative work, not
Mhm.
working when that shit goes left. You know what I
Right.
mean? And yes, we are still young. Like we're still in
Yes.
our 20s.
Absolutely. Yes. So don't be too hard on yourself, mamas. You literally
Mm-hmm.
you gave birth to a whole being.
You got
Like
a whole portal in your vagina.
literally. Like please take it easy. Take it easy. Shout out to the mamas. Mother's Day was 2 weeks ago, and we have Father's Day coming around the corner, and I'm so excited.
Shout out to the fathers.
Shout out to the fathers. Literally, I
Mm-hmm.
can't wait. I don't know why I get more excited about Father's Day, but it's also because when there's attention on me, I'm like, but also like, look at me.
Meanwhile, I'm like, it's all about me. I'm like, this is my day.
Right.
I'm like, I get a second birthday.
I love it. I love that I'm in the mamas club. Like, I just every time I meet another mom, I'm like, I see you.
Yeah.
You know,
Even on my son's birthday, I'm like, it's my Labor Day.
yes. In Korean culture, the child is supposed to cook miyeokguk, which is seaweed soup, for the mom, because seaweed soup is really good and nurturing for postpartum. Has all the nutrients, so that's like within our culture. I need to do better with my mom, but Siren will make me miyeokguk one day. He's like 5 months old, you guys. Like, let me chill.
Shall we?
Yes.
So as always, y'all say it every episode. We're always gonna pull an oracle from the oracle deck.
Yes. This time we have the Spirit deck by Colette Baron Raid. It's a spirit animal deck, actually.
Oh,
I got the butterfly spirit.
I got a spider.
Okay, spiders are good. Butterflies are good. You want to read first?
Sure. Well, it says spider spirit, make your dreams real.
Yes.
They are real. Cause baby, I'm delusional as freak.
Only way to be.
So the oracle message is weaving your dreams into the fabric of life begins with a single thread of intention. And then spirit joins you as your co-weaving partner, period. Take but a single step to make your dream a reality, and spirit will take 10 towards you. The universe is designed to support your dream weaving. Spider spirit arrives when you need reminding of the awesome power of co-creation with the spirit. Ideas and resources will begin to appear as if by magic as you begin to bring your dreams to the realm of intention, from the realm of intention into the world of senses where they take form. The actions you need to take is to be clear about your intentions and then act as if you have become the one that lives the life you desire.
Yes.
Man. The web of creation is an uncanny way of coming together to weave the beautiful pattern that you set in motion. Okay. Another message of the spider spirit is about any creative project you may be considering: writing, painting, music, journaling, gardening, etc. Now is a time when inspiration wants to be channeled through you as something creative, even artistic and tangible. Creative projects are successful now. If you are so inclined, let yourself be open to abundance. Period. Because I did a whole abundance ritual the other day.
Yes. We love that.
And like I said, I'm a painter, so if y'all need a painting, hit your girl.
Okay. Joy and the beautiful lightness of being alive and creative in the world is the focus when beautiful butterfly spirit flutters before you. Transformation is inevitable as you grow into your most beautiful, empowered self. Indeed, you will go through some uncomfortable stages as you let go of the forms of your life that no longer fit the new you. Even relationships must go through shifts to match your new emerging self. If you focus on the beauty and not the challenges, stop taking yourself too seriously, and choose to be playful, loving, and joyous, you will soon know the miracle your soul wants to experience through you. Today's a day for joy, so alight. Look around and see the beauty that is everywhere and everyone, including you. That was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Not Your Fetish Podcast. The links, all of our links will be down below. Please share, subscribe, like.
Or just in our link tree on our Instagram.
Because we put in work, okay? Yes. Okay, bye.
Peace.